green dot here. Is there something where I can actually press on the screen? Interesting.
Make sure that you're doing it from the browser, not from Google Meet.
All right. I think I'll just stop presenting.
Oh, look at all the lovely faces. There's Laura. Hi, Laura. Did you guys have a show called Romper Room?
Yes.
Yeah. I see Tanya and I see Tracy and I see
And we've all just time traveled back to being 4 or so.
it was a good year.
Xavier. Oh,
Xavier.
So, Tori, since I'm new to this platform and there's a limited number of people on the screen, is there a way to see more people or?
Yes, you can click more options, which is the 3 vertical dots to the left of the hang up button. And then one of the first options should be changed layout. And then if you click that and do tiled and move your slider all the way to the right, you should get the maximum number of people.
There we go. Thank you.
Tori.
And I noticed that some of you have something other than your name on the screen, which I appreciate. That I think I do sometimes. But I would love it if you could change that to your name. So when I try to address you, then I'm not calling you by your company or by the class you were taking.
Jay, I think that will work for everybody who is not calling in by phone, but I think the people who call in by phone may not have that option.
Gotcha. Technology.
Technology.
It's so great when it works.
Yes.
And when it doesn't, it makes us say bad
That's right.
words.
That's right. And some people are, yeah, I see what happens. You have your phone number on there. So if I call you by your name, 1360 ****, 00.
So it's a few minutes after the top of the hour. Is everybody comfortable with us getting started? And we'll just let whoever comes on. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for making time in what is always a busy month because we're transitioning from summer into fall. It's not yet fall, I know that, but we are here for the 4th of 5 Essentials with the Masters, and our wonderful presenter is Jay Perry, who will be talking about wonder. Our format is going to be Catherine doing a brief introduction, and Jay will do a presentation, and we will do our best to hold out time for questions. And the way the questions will work is that we're asking you to put your questions in the chat, which on Google Meets, there is an icon on the lower right, which is a little talk bubble. And you click that and it will open the chat and you can type your question in there. Anyway, so I'm going to turn it over to Catherine and we will get started.
Well,
I'm sorry, one more thing. My apologies. We are recording this and it will be available on our website in a week or so.
Great. And if you could all keep muted while Jay is presenting, that would be much appreciated. I think most of you have done that already. Great. Well, my name is Catherine Bray. Thank you very much for joining us. And on behalf of PAC, welcome, welcome, welcome. As Deirdre said, this is the fourth in 5 of our Essentials programming, the Masters with the Essentials. And we have the Ultimate Master here today with us. We have Jay Perry. Jay Perry, who's been coaching for years and is one of the founders of ICF and has just been so has been so important in the initiative of making coaching a worldwide practice. I have some details about Jay, although they don't begin to cover all that Jay has contributed. He is the author of Take Charge of Your Talent, 3 Keys to Thriving in Your Career, Organization, and Life. He is an MCAC with PAC and a personal champion and creative partner who helps people take advantage of both business and personal challenges in unique and powerful ways. And that is the truth. His clients include creative artists, entrepreneurs, Fortune 500 corporate executives. He's known as one of the world's leading mentors for new coaches seeking professional certification. And Jay's clients appreciate his fresh perspectives that help them to see themselves and their situations in a new light. And I can't say enough about Jay, but time prohibits me from going into it. So I am going to hand it over to Jay Perry. Thank you very much. And Jay, take it from here.
Thank you, Catherine. Hi, everybody. Nice to see some familiar, friendly faces and some not familiar, friendly faces.
I'm going to interrupt you, Jay.
You have to say the code word.
Reminding us of our opening and closing words, which I forgot to mention. I'm so sorry, Jay. Catherine, would you like to?
Our opening word is wonder, which is the topic of today's conversations. The opening word is wonder for those of you who would like to get a CEU for attending this presentation. Sorry to interrupt you, Jay, and please.
Okay. That's great. Perfect introduction. Where to start with wonder? Let me start actually with the essentials, because I think we've tried our hardest, but I'm not sure we always do them justice or have people really understand how that was created and what's important about them. And this was not anti-ICF. I want to be very clear about this. This was another alternative way of trying to get down to what actually qualifies somebody as a professional coach. And so we asked this question. We wondered about this. How do you do that? And as part of that wonder exercise, we came up with this notion of essential. In other words, if you took one of these things out, it would no longer be professional coaching or professional ADHD coaching, the way we're looking at it. You could take a lot of wonderful things about coaching and have them in, but if you took that out, you wouldn't, be like Jenga. You wouldn't destroy the whole pile. So far you've heard about safety, and we may all think, oh, safety. Yeah, I got that. My clients are safe with me. We talk openly, all of that. But if you take any one of these essentials that seem like they're very simple and obvious, and then you begin to drill down, you begin to really wonder, begin to really ask questions about what makes that essential? What am I missing about this? Is there something else? For instance, and I can't remember whether you went into it or not, but take safety. Are we only thinking about that as what makes the client safe? Or are we also wondering about what makes you, the coach, safe? Are you safe in all situations? Are you safe to speak your mind openly? Are you safe to share your deepest thoughts, even if they don't make sense? Or are you afraid that if you say something or do something, you'll lose the client? So there are lots of ways to do this, but I want you to get that each of the essentials are somehow connected to each of the other ones. And so to wonder about each of the essentials, rather than just accept it as we, PAC, are telling you, and you're supposed to believe us. Your job as a coach is to wonder. Consultants get paid to know stuff. Coaches are paid to wonder. So with that, let's start wondering. Is that smooth or what? Oh, I'm just getting used to this platform. So, just big enough for everybody to see? Anybody want to read the green statement? Oh, you're all muted. Sorry.
I'll read it, Jay.
Thanks.
Okay. Knowledge is a big subject, but ignorance is a bigger one. And it is ignorance, not knowledge, that is the true engine of science. Most of us have a false impression of science as a surefire, deliberate, step-by-step method for finding things out and getting things done.
All right, now here we are in a coaching session, and I started off with this slide about science. Just what Liz read. What does it make you wonder about? And you will have to come off mute. They can come off mute, right? Yeah.
Well, I'll jump in and say when I see the word ignorance, then I'm curious. You know, instead of assuming that I know it, if I think I'm ignorant about something, I'm going to be more inquisitive.
Okay.
I immediately try to think about like what's the relationship between the scientific process of experimentation and the coaching process of questioning, asking questions.
I wonder why the word ignorance triggers me.
Thank you, Roger. Let me take that as a jumping off place. We'll continue with this, but I'm going to make an assertion, and again, I'll let you wonder about it or push back on it if you want. But that we have all grown up in a culture that worships knowledge. It raises knowledge and knowing. So how many people recognize that when you were in school, you got better grades if you knew stuff? You didn't get better grades for asking better questions. And so this is endemic to our cultural beings. And from the ADHD perspective, if you grew up someplace where you felt shamed or you felt put down or you felt like you weren't adequate because you didn't know something or have the right answer, because maybe you were already 3 pages ahead because you were bored with what everybody else was on. So this is just to recognize that we're up against something with wonder. It's not something that we were awarded for necessarily. And if you look at your own, this is sort of getting to the bottom line of what we're here for today. Of if you recognize that you still think, and I don't mean this as you consciously think or you've signed up for this. It's just, again, cultural, that you think that your value as a coach is how much you know. Then you're limited in what you can do for your clients. Now, knowing is not bad. It's just, another tool, another way of using our brains. But I am asserting that our use of wonder is subordinate to our use of knowing. And that we often have to be very conscious that we're engaging in wonder. And so, Roger, I'm just suggesting perhaps that ignorance triggering is something way from the not just your personal past, but from our shared cultural past. Is that's an insult? You ignorant, fill in the blank.
How dare you?
Roger, would you reach the orange section?
Sure. In fact, says Firestein, often science is looking for a black cat in a dark room, and there may not be a cat in the room.
I love that.
Fantastic.
Anybody relate coaching to this statement?
I can. I guess it makes me think of making assumptions or asking questions, looking for a specific answer, instead of being open to whatever comes back.
So this assumption that we may have that just like science, we look to this that there are right answers or there are known answers. Again, you may find that in the essentials, there is both the support for knowing, as in like the ADHD lens. It's great that we know some things, that we have studies, but even those studies, remember, came from science, which started from ignorance. But how much of coaching is actually based on ignorance? And I would even go to say willful ignorance. And I don't know that I would absolutely define wonder that way, but it could be a good start. Willful ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think unlike the scientist who is usually needing to choose some theory that they're then trying to see whether it's true or not, our our challenge is to really remain even more ignorant than that in our not knowing, and to just be fully open to whatever it might be, so that our theory is not getting in the way. But it's very difficult not to jump from one theory to this person is anxious about it's about this or whatever. I mean, those kinds of thoughts are coming in, and I think I wouldn't use willfulness. I've heard it said that where there is where there is willfulness, there's a wall. Where there's willingness, there's a way. And I think it's more a willingness to be not knowing.
Yeah. I'll just read this last one in interest of time. But this process is, and I'm going to ask you to, you can just insert coaching for science here. This process is more hit or miss than you might imagine, with much stumbling and groping after phantoms. But it's exactly this not knowing, this puzzling over thorny questions or inexplicable data, that gets researchers into the lab early and keeps them there late. The thing that propels them, the very driving force of science. I'm just going to reread that last part with slight changes. That gets coaches into their seats early and keeps them there late. The thing that propels them, the very driving force of coaching. It's a little warm up, but I elevated myself to the association of Socrates here. But he did say, not in English, because I don't think even as wise as he was, he didn't speak English, but in his language at the time, wonder is the beginning of wisdom. And what I added was, and wonder ends at knowing. It's not an absolute, but it is a great likelihood that once you know something, or, and this is important, think you know something, then you tend not to wonder about it anymore. You don't probably spend lots of time wondering about, why does 1 and 1 equals 2? And are there instances where 1 and 1 does not equal 2? Are there instances where the shortest different distance between things are not straight lines? You don't think, oh, I'm running late, I better walk around that block 3 times. And so I've added here, if wonder is the beginning of wisdom, thank you, Socrates, and if wonder ends at knowing, thank you, Jay, what's the relationship between knowing, knowledge, and wisdom? And this is a question to wonder about. Come off mute anytime you want to respond, and just know that again, we want to try to get to the point with our answers.
What keeps getting in popping up in my head is curiosity and wonder. And it's almost like wonder is part of the via strengths, those of us who have curiosity, because that's what turns on my magic, whether it's people or coaches. And I don't mean that selfishly. I just mean when I get curious, and what is the relation between knowing and wisdom, right? So curiosity is the beginning of wisdom, and curiosity ends at knowing. So I think curiosity is like a subset of wonder, if that makes any sense. Anyway, that's what just pops into my head.
Is there a distinction, you think, between curiosity and wonder?
I don't know. Wonder sounds more magical, though, doesn't it?
I think that wisdom includes knowing or accepting what you don't know, as well as acknowledging what you do know.
I agree. It feels to me like knowing can end wonder. And that's kind of scary because then we lose wisdom. Is that making some sense there?
It makes perfect sense.
You have a hand from Marie, Jay.
Oh, Marie.
Yes, I don't know, but well, you got me in the first section there with science. You know, what is science? But science is about evidence and evidence-based facts, right? So information, evidence-based information, and the willingness to accept that information until it's replaced with new information. But when it comes to wonder, we come from a place of being totally naive, of knowing nothing.
Yeah, and I've given a lot of thought to this thing about curiosity and wonder, and again, the thing I've come up with, and I'm not claiming that it's true or that I'm done wondering about it, only that what I've come up with as a possibly useful distinction. And I'm adding something here in parentheses. My search in all of this, including wonder, is utility. How is this useful? So for me, curiosity is, ooh, I'm curious to know something about that. I know that somebody knows something about that, or that's known, so I want to find out what that is.
May I say something else?
Can I just finish that thought? So curiosity is about something that's known but not by me, and wonder is about, looking up at clouds and, oh, look at the bunnies, and just imagining. Yeah, Marie.
Yeah, can we say also that I mean, the wondering piece is about the clients. We can never know. It's not a knowing about the client. It's their perception of themselves that is their knowing, and that's different. We cannot know that unless they tell it to us.
And so when they tell it to us,
Yeah, we need to ask.
do,
We
do
need to
we
be
now
curious.
know, do we now know something, or is that
No,
food for more
no,
wonder?
we're only being curious and accepting their sharing with us as their truth for the moment.
Oh, brilliant. So no, so that their truth for the moment.
Mhm.
Because there's something really important. I'm not clear whether this is what you meant to say or whether I'm adding to it, but one of the things I've heard in there is that whenever we ask a client a question and they answer it, do we assume that that's the truth or that's accurate, or do we actually wonder about the answer and hope to inspire wonder in the client about that thing that they're holding to be true or accurate? Let me if I'm getting confusing, just let me know. Somebody let me know, but because sometimes these arguments seem to get a little circular.
I think it's super interesting, Jay.
And I think we have to wonder also about whether we are interpreting properly what we think we heard from them. So that I don't know, and maybe I don't know what we can know about that, but we know we know we think we heard them say these words, and we think they probably meant that in the usual way those words are used, but but I think we don't really know.
Yeah, and we use reflection tools and things like that to try to check in and see if we're on the same wavelength. And it may be, well, let's look at one of the first principles that we learn about coaching. What do we do at the beginning of the call once we've done our little chit chat and all of that?
Make sure the check cleared.
That's accurate. The check's in the mail, Roger. But aren't we supposed to get an agenda? Isn't that what we're told? And so I asked the client, well, what would you like to focus on? What would you like to end with? What would you like to, all of those questions that help us pass the exams. And then the coaching session takes off based on our acceptance or belief that what they just told us was accurate, or the most powerful thing we could do here today. And it's supposed to be actually going back in time. We do that to honor the fact that the client is in charge of this conversation. And I've done a lot of wondering about that too. And one can coach from that perspective, that the client is the knowing, the client is responsible for their own decisions, for their own life, all of that. And that can be absolutely a wonderful approach to coaching. And another approach is to approach it as a partnership, where neither one of us knows. And what we're doing is we're engaging in this conversation of wonder until we bump into something that's really useful. And whether that's because something was dark and lights up, there's an aha, there's a shift, there's a lightness, but we know that something happens. We've all had that experience, right? Where something changes, and it could be in just with the client or in our partnership. But the courage that it takes to be willing to not know, sometimes for minutes, half hours, hours, weeks, in the pursuit of discovery, I always think back on who was the idiot who was brave enough to take some disease and inject it back into the animal to cure it, and then experimented on themselves. Roger, you
Jay,
were going to say something? Yeah.
how did you know? There's your intuition. So would it be fair to say then that, going back to Socrates, that wisdom is the sum total of the process of creating and finding or discovering things that are useful for as long as they're useful. But staying in that place of wonder allows us to accumulate more and more bits of wisdom and allows for the evolution. The thing that keeps coming up for me is evolution. Michael Stratford once said to me, he said, perfectionism is counter-evolutionary because perfectionism means that all change stops. So wouldn't wisdom be the collection, the continual collection of useful things for as long as they're useful, and wonder is the vehicle to collect those things?
Beautifully said. A little long for a license plate, but really, yeah, maybe the collection of it and not it.
Yeah, I like to think of it not as something that I'm collecting or that I possess, but that wisdom is out there, and it's not my wisdom. Even though I might become increasingly open to hearing that still small voice of wisdom, but it's not as collectible as we might like to think. I think it's but it is every bit more real than what what collectible wisdom might be.
Got
If
it.
that makes sense.
That makes sense, Neil. Thank you. If it's all right, I'm going to move on just because I realize we're halfway through. We're more than halfway through, and I'm on slide number 2, which was fine. Remember, I started saying, I don't know how this is going to work because we're making this up as we go. But just a few things here and also on the next slide, some phrases that you may want to engage in just to practice, just to start strengthening the muscle of wonder, to just give yourself a place to start. Things like what if, is there, could it be that? What would who say about that? Like, what would your mother say about that? What would Socrates say about that? You've probably all had clients who have sometimes said, and I stopped and thought, what would Roger say? Or what would Neil say? Or what would Rosemary say? There we go. Yeah, this is just some more if you want to. This is going to be on the recording, but if you want to take some notes, if you're the kind of person who loves to do that. And let's just look at this last question, which I found really, really useful for me and my clients. Because you got to recognize that wonder isn't something just that we do or just that we want to inspire in our clients. We want to create a little universe of wonder if we can, that where the circle is drawn around us. And often what's in the way of our wondering and discovery are the things we know. So as Thomas Leonard once said to me many years ago, 37 years ago, he said, Jay, what's the middle word in client? And I puzzled and puzzled and puzzled till I went, lie. I said, Thomas, my clients don't lie to me. And he said, oh, yeah. So we're not talking necessarily about willful lying. It's not the clients are trying to pull the wool over our eyes, but it's just that they are left with, or what is most easily available to them is the answer that they've been living with for a long time. And yet they've come to us because they want to make a change of some kind. And the change probably is going to engage with they're recognizing and giving up what they know in favor of something that is more useful, more wonderful. So as we listen to those things that they tell us to our questions, and if we accept them, we're now in their way. I need to say that again. If we ask them a question and they tell us something like it's the truth, and we accept that without wondering about it or encouraging wonder about it, then we might be the person who's actually standing in their way. So I know Roger and Liz are still working on what qualifies somebody to be an MCAC at PAC. And I know that as we created it, one of the things that always occurred to me is that the MCAC was able to recognize and engage in transformational conversations. And transformational conversations always include the recognition of some assumption that our beliefs are based on, and the ability to trade out that basic assumption for something new or something different. Because if we keep starting from the same place, we're likely to end up in the same place. Is there anybody who wants to comment on that, ask a question about that? And
Well, yes, this what you're saying resonates with me because I specialize in, women 50 over, and people are coming with some wisdom that they've acquired, and even the VIA shows us that, like, the older people have more things more like them than the millennials do, and they have done a lot of questioning. And I think that they're part of the wisdom of being older, everybody's heard this, is knowing that there are things that you don't know, and knowing that there's some things that you don't know, and being willing to explore that in a way that a lot of times when people are younger, they think they don't have time for. And then when they're older, it's like, well, this is the time. So I see a lot of willingness to wonder in the older people. Maybe so willingness to start in a different place. That's what you said. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, and I've known you to a degree for a couple of years now, I guess, at least, maybe more. And what I know about you is you're somebody who continues to wonder. So you modeled that and you bring it to your coaching. And that's always a place for us to look. I go back to that, and I certainly am not accusing anybody of anything, but I certainly have seen enough of it then in the insecurity of becoming a coach, or sometimes it actually becomes habit, that you fall into that trap of thinking that your value is in knowing stuff. And Kristen, I think you're a great example of bringing that willingness to not know. So thanks for that. We got to move on a little bit here, but this is to bring another little wrinkle into it. But if you could insert that, just that first blank, I want to, and see if you can come up with something honestly that you really want to, but somehow in your knowing, you can't. And I would imagine all of us have heard some form of this from a client. Only one. Anybody got one as an example?
Are you talking like I want to do this, but I know I can't because I've already tried that with this
Yeah, it could be something
person?
like that. Sure.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, like especially in what do you call inattentive ADHD, the people who think through everything. So they thought through it all, and they're like, yeah, no, I've tried that, and it's hard to get people to wonder like that.
Yeah.
And I used to be that myself. So yeah.
Got it. So here's this distinction, which sometimes gets left out of wondering, because again, culturally, we tend to think in I messages. We tend to get enclosed by what some people call the egocentric dilemma, is I can only perceive the world through my own senses. And I have become that person who stands in the way of me achieving my becoming whatever that thing is. And the little thing for this slide is to recognize that if you just change I want to and I wonder, first of all, if I could with. So this is an interesting phrase for me, is wondering with, or wondering if I can with. So if I wonder by myself, is that the same as wondering with a coach who is a good wonderer or good at inciting and willingness to give you the time to wonder? Encourages wondering. Is it the same as wondering if you could with certain resources? For those of you who know David Gwerk, one of his famous stories is, I wanted to write a book and I can't, until he went, well, I wanted to write a book and I can if I use talk to text.
Jay, this is
Yeah.
Vidya.
Hey,
Hi.
Vidya.
Hey, so this was something that I picked up from you a while back in one of your Wonder workshops and have used with a lot of my clients. One of my clients, I just want to share this with you, came up with another way to do this. If she says, I can't, I know I can't do something unless,
Oh,
and she says you have to do it with the 3 dots after it, right? Like unless dot dot dot, and so that was an even almost like an easier way to do the same thing, because if they say the negative statement, they don't even have to rephrase it. You can just be like unless, and that I just want to share that because I picked this up from you and it's been really powerful.
oh, that's well, not what you got for me, but the unless I think is brilliant. So, what time we got? What time we have to be finished?
We're technically supposed to be finished at 12 o'clock.
Okay. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to move on and do questions and stuff. And if it's all right with the powers that be, I'll stay on for another 15, 20 minutes. And there's a couple exercises we could do together that we wouldn't have time to if we're not going to look at people's questions. That okay, guys?
That's very generous of you. Thank you very much.
There's a famous quote. I didn't do the whole quote here, which is a little bit more convoluted, but it's a brilliant piece of writing. But the last line in it is, the more I wonder, he say, the more I love. You notice that in wonder, there's no judgment. There's no right, wrong. And those are the things that get in the way of love. One definition I've heard of love is having another person be exactly who they are and exactly who they're not. It's another way that you can see perhaps that wonder connects to safety and connects to collaboration. And this is Well, let's do questions first, and we'll come back. We'll come back to this. Gonna disengage and come back.
Great, thank you. Do people want to put their questions in the chat if they have some? We've got some interesting comments, but I don't see too many questions. Do you, Deirdre?
I've just been that clear.
You've been very clear. Actually, honestly, Jay, I'm going to have to re-listen to this again. I think it's so profound. It made me think that talking about the value of knowing and realizing it's the value of wondering, not knowing. But I often find that when I think I know something, it is the launch pad for wondering about something else. It is just a moment in the journey of wondering that may never have an end. And I have to be comfortable with that because there's always something more to wonder about.
Springboard rather than a dead end.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But
I think that's very, yeah, what you just said. I just want to say you resonate with me because there's a lot of people who really hate not knowing, which gets in the way of that, right? Because it's what you just said. They want it to end. I love that.
And if I could, let me put a little wrinkle in there. If you recognize it, put this back in the scientific realm. If you recognize that that thing we know, and I always add this, or think we know, becomes a new assumption from which to wonder, which I think is really what you're saying. I'm just saying it in a little different way. Then we're not tied to that thing we think we know. We're just recognizing that the assumption we were working with gives us that answer. And once again, one of the measures I use is the utilitarian one. Is this useful? Does it help? Does it create more happiness? Does it create more possibilities? Does it ease my stress? You know, what do I get out of using this as a platform, as a belief, as an assumption? And I like assumption better than belief, because belief somehow gets tied up in religion, and I don't know, you sort of have an attachment to your beliefs, as opposed to it's just an assumption, you know, and it's a really useful assumption. Like one of the assumptions I use with ADHD coaching, which I never did before I started coaching ADHDers, is that ADHDers succeed by discovering and doing things their own way. Now, is that true? I don't know. But is it useful? I found it to be very useful.
Kristen, what you just said really resonated with me when I think about some of my clients not liking to live in that space. You know, they like the black and white thinking and the perfectionism of I've always been in trouble. I've always been thought less of. So I think that helping them to learn the art of wondering and questioning helps alleviate their negative self-talk and helps them to sort of push back on what the culture and family or whatever have told them for years and years. And so not only wonder for us, but helping our clients to be willing to sit in that gray area that is not always their favorite spot to sit.
That's fantastic, Tanya. And I one of the things I really try to do is to see how much fun we can have with wonder and to celebrate wonder wherever it shows up. Like if I ask a client something and they go, gosh, I don't know, I'll go, yes, you don't know. Because I don't know is such an important phrase in our language. And I apologize for anybody whose primary language is other than English. That may be true for you too, but I don't know means can be said in a way that is an acceptance or an acknowledgement of failure. I don't know. You know, what's the capital of Wyoming? I don't know. You know, or it can be the beginning of wonder. I don't know. There's I love movies. So anybody remember the movie Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks? It's about trading spies with Russia. Well, there's the communist spy, the Russian spy, who is in prison. He's awaiting to be executed, and they're working on a trade with him for Gary Powers, the U-2 pilot. Some of you are old enough to remember that. But Tom Hanks kept coming into the prisoner's cell and going, and the prisoner was very relaxed. And Tom Hanks would say, "You know, your execution is coming up, and we're trying to get this done. Aren't you worried about this?" And the spy looks up and goes, "Would it help?"
Jay,
You've never seen the movie. It's wonderful. Go back and watch it, and then you'll laugh at that part. Yes.
Jay, I saw Dusty had a question, but she's in her car.
Does that mean she no longer has a question?
Yeah, she wanted to say it out loud is what, but I don't know that she can get the attention.
It's me. I'm in my car.
Yay.
Okay. They work in Canada, right? Okay.
It means type. I can't type without getting arrested, maybe. My part. Yeah. We have cops here too. Yeah. My question is like, okay, so sorry, go ahead. You talked about like wondering with, right? So like, I wonder if I could with, and my question is like, if you can get a client who's maybe like a bit more of a rigid thinker to that point where, what? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, you're just
Are you
breaking
guys
up
hearing me okay?
Yes. Go ahead.
Are you guys able to hear me? Oh, I think
Yes,
maybe I lost you or something.
No, we can hear you just fine. Can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what was going on there. Okay, sorry, here's my question. So if you can do that thing where you can get clients to wonder with, or like, oh, I could with, let's say, for example, that you can get a client to the point where they are maybe willing to, I don't want to use the word like admit, but like kind of acknowledge that like, oh, I could, with say like more money or something like that. I guess I'm wondering like, what is the next step to turn that into like a coaching action? If like, I'm just thinking about some of the clients that I've had that are like really kind of negative. And even when I get them to that place where it's like, okay, I acknowledge that this is not like written in the stars, that this is like a rule in my head, but okay, but I don't have more money. So like, what good is it to wonder? Like, what do you do? How do you like keep somebody going in that direction or help them turn that into something useful? If they're really kind of set on like, okay, but I don't have that thing. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And this is so situational, and because there are people who are going to argue against you no matter what. It's their safety protection. It's just, even though they know that this is an uncomfortable place to be and they want something else, they'll resist everything because they're just not ready to break out of there. And there may be situations where it's just not a coachable moment. I don't have a rigid answer here because I don't know, but here are some places I've played around with that seem to have worked, and they're sort of good fits for me. Number one is being more playful. The more humor you can bring to some of these situations, not always, but sometimes loosens things up. Can we recognize that we're playing here? That this isn't so serious that it's a life and death matter, because that's what's behind the fear. Is if I try this, if I engage in this, I'll die, is what your brain is saying. So lightening it up is one thing. And one of the techniques I've used that I have been told is not always appropriate coaching, but our stories, our personal stories, that I can tell stories that give examples of things. And my clients tell me they remember the stories, which is why I wonder why ICF doesn't seem to, it doesn't seem to honor that as much as some other things. Powerful messaging, it doesn't seem to honor as much. Stories that can be inspirational or are more memorable for people. So I would tell a story like, 1979, me and a bunch of my friends got together. We saw a theater for sale in Manhattan. It was being sold for $95,000. with $15,000 down and 5% mortgage or something. I mean, it's crazy. We got money from our aunts and uncles and parents and friends. We bought the theater and we started restoring it. And then we got to a certain place and we ran out of money. And we're sitting around dejected. And suddenly somebody comes up the stairs and goes, "What's going on here?" And we say, "Well, we bought the theater, we're renovating it." He said, "Really? How much do you need?" He said, "About $15,000. He said, "All right, tell me more. I may be interested." It's like just to recognize that if if you're like this, universe, don't provide, no, I can't, like the old joke about the guy praying to God to save him from the flood, who, turns down the rowboat and turns down the helicopter and all that stuff. And it's mad at God for not saving him. And God says, I sent you a helicopter, I sent you a rowboat, so lightening it up, telling stories to anchor them so that their thoughts keep coming back, because we are creatures of story. And if the story has become congealed, it becomes harder and harder. The other way, which I've had experience with too, both me as a coach and me as a client, is those really strong messages. And they need to be spoken with absolute, like, I don't know, chi is the word that comes to me from experience, but that energy, like you're right through the middle of their heart with this one, is something like, okay, if you're not willing to explore this is your life. It'll never be different. And you shut up and just let them process.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, that wouldn't be
Jay, that's
official
gold.
coaching, but
Jay,
it takes bravery to do that, and it's not something to be used all the time. But sometimes that's what's needed to crack open the egg. Yeah, Rudy.
yes, a comment, a statement that's been coming up for me during this entire conversation about wisdom and people who are attached to their beliefs or I can't do this. Years ago, I learned a statement, the moment you think you know me, you stop knowing me. And so the same would be true of the moment I think I know this truth, I've stopped knowing, or whatever context you can reframe that in.
Yeah. Just like the old, if you know one ADHD or one ADHD. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Jay, I have a couple of questions from the chat, and wait a second, disappeared. One of the things that Tori has a comment about. Tori, can you take over and tell me what you wanted to know? It just disappeared. Sorry.
I was interested to have Jay comment on the relationship between wonder and perspective.
I think if you wonder, one of the things that will happen is you will take different perspectives, or this will work both ways around. You could take a different perspective. And I've done coaching exercises. I don't know whether any of you have done this, even where you ask the client to stand in a different part of their room or go outside, and just having a different perspective can change all of their thinking. Now, this is all tied up with our story, the way our brain operates and the stories that it generates, and the relationship between the stories and our brain chemistry, and there's all of this stuff that we have begun to know more and more about, even though there's more we don't know than we think we know about all this. But it does that. The thing about perspective, I think, is a great way to think about this. It's a way to both ignite wonder and something also where wonder will take us.
Thank you, Jay. It is 11:59, and I know you're going to stay for a few minutes, and I do have one more question for you. But for those of you who may have to leave because you have a client or something, I want to give the closing word. And the closing word is transformational. Transformational, which I think this has been for so many of us. So again, that's transformational. And I have a question from Rhea Finch. What is it about entering into wonder in coaching that uniquely fits the ADHD mind?
Boy, do we have another hour? I'm going to try to short this one, but say we've got two operating systems in our brain, and I'm taking this from other people who know more about this than I do, scientists. But one is this computer-like system, and that is the one that we have treasured over the years, and it said, if you can answer this many things right, you go to Harvard, and if you don't, you become a I don't know, carpenter. The other part of our brain, which works with neurons and synapses, is like a hopscotch. And it really is our creative brain, our ability to make stuff up without all of the burdensome archives that are in our more logical brain. ADHDers seem to have better access to that creative brain by and large than many other people in our culture. So I think that as AI and other instruments, machine learning stuff, become better and better at using our old logical brain that was so highly prized, that part of our brain becomes less useful or less important, and the creative side gets more important. So this could be a place where engaging with wonder and creativity could be an advantage for ADHDers.
Great. Well, Jay, you wanted to do some exercises with us, and it's 12:01. And would you like to shift and do some exercises?
Sure. It's just if you're departing, please depart now. If you're going to depart in 10 or 15 minutes, that's fine. But and Tori, well, this is the one thing I didn't do. So let me do this for exercises. I'm going to share this screen, and this is just take a moment. But if you wanted to have homework or some takeaways, this is just some suggestions, perhaps. Things you could take away here. What I call knots of knowing. This is places where what you know impedes your wisdom, impedes your ability to do certain things. If you just recognize that knot, and so that's something you can keep recognizing as it comes up and see if you can let that go, whether it's in meditation or in prayer or just in humor. There's all kinds of ways you can do that. Any new possibilities that have occurred to you? Any experiments, things you'd like to try for the purpose of discovery that have occurred to you out of this? Questions you want to take away, as I used to call this, walk away wonders. You want to walk away with this question to wonder about, or anything else that was unexpected. So if you want to take a minute, if you wanted to take a note for yourself. And then I'm going to go back to this. Which one do we want to do? Okay, let's do this one. In a minute, we're going to put you into breakout rooms, 2 people in a room, and you'll have about, you'll just have like 6 minutes, 3 minutes each side. So please manage your time with that. But this is all you're going to need to know for this exercise. One of you will be the coach and the other the client, and then you'll switch after 3 minutes. And all you ask coach is, what do you want? And the client's going to say, well, I know I want this. And then you say, what? Sorry, where'd it go? Hello. Oh, did it come off of share?
No,
we're
switch slides. Just pick your other slide.
It's sort of frozen on my end here.
Okay.
That's happening. Oh, that's, I know why. That was just me being silly, I think. Yeah. So what do you want? I know I want X. And then all the coach says is the same question over and over again. If you had that, what would be possible? If you had that, what would be possible? If you had that, what would be possible? Got it?
Mhm.
And then, coach, the other thing you're practicing here is giving the client time to wonder. All right, Tori. Groups of 2, and you'll slowly disappear. Bye. Did you? You're stuck with us.
I am.
No, she's not.
It's a little bit
I missed
challenging
it.
because a lot of people were dropping off the call at the last minute.
Got it. That's why I asked them to leave if they. Can we time the 6 minutes?
Yes, I put a timer on.
Okay.
Hey, there was no one else in my room. Was there supposed to be someone else in my
Well,
room?
I just fixed it.
Oh, okay.
Just a
Should
second.
I? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tori.
Okay, should be good.
So did we get the job done, guys?
And here's Catherine. Is it because I put
No,
technology?
I took Catherine out because the person she was with left.
Oh, we're going to give her a complex. I doubt it.
Yes, I will get a compliment. Jade,
Jay.
this is amazing.
Yeah,
Jade, will you do a second part for us?
I was thinking the same thing. Part 2.
Sure. Yeah,
Because this has been amazing.
I think it
And
really,
for slides.
I know it really challenges how I think as a person.
Just
And
as a sorry, Deirdre, just as a reminder, this is being recorded, but the breakout rooms are not.
okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we heard Jay say yes, so it's being recorded. So definitively yes, then.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I've been pretty much housebound for the last 3 months, so I got lots of time. So
Mm.
So maybe we could pick a November date and do Wonder Part 2.
Well, November's going to be a little tricky, Catherine.
Oh, that's true.
But
I don't want to leave it too long because I want them to have continuity.
Okay, well, maybe off this we can
Absolutely.
look at some dates
Whatever works for Jay too.
Ideas to Jay, and he can let us know because it's really
yeah, the unknown for me at this point is whether I'm going to have surgery in October, November, somewhere in there. So I'll know more about that in a few weeks.
Whatever works for you.
This is fun for me. Been a lifetime thinking about this stuff.
It's so apparent.
Well, I find it challenging in a good way, though, because I think, as you say, we get into knowing and is our value in knowing. And there is so much external value in knowing. And then you realize knowing is an illusion.
How many people have I heard, all the stuff about imposter syndrome and, like, well, you're not an imposter if you don't know enough. You're an imposter if you know too much. And I say that with tongue in cheek. But.
Well, doesn't that get back to sort of the idea of like there is a there, aren't we all sort of imposters on some level and maybe not experts, but excel in other areas?
Yeah, that's true, I think.
But if you're being yourself, can you be an imposter? Isn't part of who you're posing to be part of who
Yeah.
you are?
Well, yeah, I know. It's again, it's part of our cultural thing,
Mhm.
and it's coaches. It's not quite the same as being a pharmacist. Where you can,
Mm.
I know what that drug is, and I know how to dispense it, and I know how to tell the patient how to use it, and all of that. And I'm thrilled that pharmacists know what they know. I don't want my pharmacist wondering about, well, I'm not sure how you take this. Maybe try rubbing it on your bum. What?
It's like we found a lucky driving school, and I said to my husband, luck should have nothing to do with this. This should be the really skillful driving school.
That's very funny.
Jay, I loved what you said about a knowledge-based value system for learning, which is something I really struggle with. And I think we're seeing the fallout of that with all the anxiety and depression of our youth. And we never honor the process and reward the wonder. And I think it's very detrimental.
Yeah. When growing up, I think the focus was on learning how to be a critical thinker.
Yes.
And then with the Common Core came along, all of that shifted to test scores and all of that stuff in a different way. So.
For schools, yeah, Common Core. That's a good point.
People are coming back.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah, let me get out of this screen. I think we need it. We're back. This is all the people we have back, right?
Yep, 14.
Yeah. Great. So anything valuable you want to share from that exercise?
Well, you can't do 6 meaningful questions in 3 minutes. You have to think and ponder. They're good questions. So, yeah.
Did you use different questions, or you just repeated the same question?
We repeated the same question, and it was really hard. I'll tell you what it was. It was really hard not to coach and to ask more curious questions about what Kristen said. So to have to keep saying the same thing was like, but it seemed like it was very impactful, but it was like your coaching hat goes on and you want to say, things like that.
But I feel like that was coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And she only got one question from me. So, but those are challenging questions. Like if you didn't know anything as a coach, you could just stick with that and help somebody a lot.
So Liz's statement could be rephrased in that it was really hard to coach, but you were doing it, by sticking with that question instead of satisfying your own curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
exactly.
I love that you got that. Yeah,
exactly.
And you see that our recognition. Oh, what's I just trying to make it simple. I love that it says telemarketing, and then you don't have to worry. That when we ask it, so here's the old thing. You can't tell me if you recognize this. We were taught to ask open-ended questions, right? And if you at least follow my thinking, one of the things I learned over my tenure as a coach was that asking open-ended questions didn't necessarily have anything to do with wonder. Because usually what would happen, because our brain doesn't want to work that hard normally, you would just get the first answer off the top of the stack. So there wasn't any real wonder about it. You never got outside the box. You just accessed a different archive in the brain. So I want to say this like it's a rule, and of course it's not, but any question worth asking once is worth asking multiple times. Because now what you're doing, instead of satisfying your own curiosity, Neil, as you said, you're recognizing that this client's brain needs time to answer the question with the first things that come off the stack until it gets a place of like, I'm empty. Now I really have to wonder about this. Now I have to explore. Now I have to go outside of what I would normally think I know.
Yeah, I feel like each answer was igniting Liz's sense of wonder, and it's almost like I guess we can put that in as pin in it as a coach, and then ask the question again, and then put a pin in that wonder question. You know what I'm saying? As we drill down, and then we end up with like at least 6 things to wonder. And we get a choice, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, so when you get that there are different answers to the same question, that's very different than assuming that every question that gets asked gets an answer and that's done. That would be like, trying to find water in the desert, and you go down like 12 inches and nope, no water there. Let's look for another place. Nope, no water there.
It's like putting your 4-year-old hat on, I think. And it just brought me back to my children in the back seat saying, well, what if that? What if that? What if that? And just like, I don't know.
A friend's son is an adult with some special needs. That's his favorite question to ask people when he meets. Do you want some candy? No. Why? Well, why? And he keeps saying why. He thinks it's a lot of fun. So that's interesting.
Yeah. But this, I invite you to play with any of this stuff that we've gone over. But this is one that I think is really worthwhile. There's 2 I'll leave you with here. One is look at questions and see if they're worth asking more than once, or experiment with asking them more than once. And, depending on the nature of your relationship, you might just be able to do it. And, there's enough trust and connection that you don't need to give it context. In other cases, you may want to say, and do you mind if I ask you that question again? And this time, could you really just notice that how quickly your answers come up, and see if you can put that aside and see if there's another answer there? Just something that lets them know that you're conscious of this. You're not making a mistake by asking again, or there's nothing wrong with them because they're asking the question again, or did they make a mistake, something like that. And the other thing is, if you struggle with this on your end, and I've had a lot of clients do this, is just write down "I don't know" 10 times on a piece of paper. And when you do a coaching call with someone, see if you can check that off every time you say "I don't know." And even
we
it doesn't
say or they say?
No, when you say.
When I say I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. That you're very, very clear that you, just by doing this, you're giving them permission to not know. That's, you're modeling something. But it's also for you, because you recognize that you would come right away with that first question that came up, or you would go right away with that strategy that has worked for other people, or you would come up with that thing you learned in, so it's a way of slowing yourself down, and just reconfirming for yourself that not knowing is okay. Not knowing is the source of wonder, or I don't know.
And one has to really arrive at a conviction about that, I think, because when they say what, would they ask you the question, and there's a very enticing compliment in that, the fact, and they're asking you, and it's an opportunity for you to get some strokes for your own ego by answering it, and we fall for it easily, and it's so it's a little painful for us to say, I don't know, even because a part of us is thinking, well, I do know, I could give them this answer, and they're likely to be impressed with that. Well, that's a trap for us, and one I fall into too often.
Yeah, that's a great observation, Neil. Thanks.
Well,
All
everyone.
right.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No,
Did
I think
somebody?
we were both trying to wrap up at the same time.
Yes, sorry. You go ahead, Jay.
No, you're the president.
Okay, well then, I have learned I know much less than I thought I knew, and that I'm going to wonder all the things I don't know. I want to thank you very much, Jay. This has been an incredible hour and 20 minutes. And I so appreciate your taking the time and your wisdom and your wonder. And so thank you all for joining us for this. We will be doing action on October the 4th with Dr. Alan Graham. We're even seeing if maybe Jay could do a second pass on wonder and we could get to the rest of his slides. So thank you very much for everyone. Have a wonderful weekend and we shall see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.